Emma Walsh didn't believe in fate until the moment she stood up from that corner table at Gramercy Coffee House, her empty cup balanced in her palm, and heard a voice that made her pause mid-motion. "Please don't." She turned back, eyebrows raised. The man sitting across from where she'd been seated for the past 30 minutes looked at her with an intensity that caught her off guard. He was handsome in that polished way some men carried themselves, dark hair slightly tousled from running his fingers through it while they'd talked, jaw strong and defined. His suit probably cost more than her monthly rent. "I should go," she said, though her feet didn't move. "I have work in an hour." "5 more minutes," Carter Sinclair said, and there was something almost desperate in his voice that made her heart skip. Just 5 more minutes. She'd met him exactly 45 minutes earlier when she'd claimed the last available table in the packed café. He'd approached with a disarming smile, asked if he could share the space since everything else was taken. She'd agreed, expecting silence or maybe a brief exchange of pleasantries. Instead, they'd fallen into conversation like water finding its natural course. They talked about everything and nothing. About the weather turning cold too early, about the documentary she'd watched last night, about his opinion on whether dogs understood human language or just tone. Normal things. Easy things. But somewhere in those 45 minutes, something had shifted. The way he leaned forward when she spoke, like her words mattered more than anything else in the world. The way she found herself laughing at his dry humor, genuine laughs that came from somewhere deep and real. The way the noise of the cafe had faded until it felt like they were the only 2 people in the room. 5 minutes, Emma heard herself say, setting her cup back down and sliding into her seat. "But then I really do have to go. My boss is already annoyed I took a long lunch." Carter's face brightened, and she noticed for the first time the small scar above his left eyebrow. It humanized him somehow, made him less perfect and more real. "What do you do?" he asked, and she could tell he genuinely wanted to know. "I work at Riverside Elementary," Emma said. "Second-grade teacher. 23 7-year-olds who think I'm ancient and also somehow the coolest person they know." "That's incredible," Carter said, and he meant it. "I can't imagine having that much patience." "It's not about patience," Emma corrected, tucking a strand of her light brown hair behind her ear. "It's about loving them. When you care about what you're doing, it doesn't feel like work. Well, most days. Some days it definitely feels like work." He laughed, and the sound made something warm bloom in her chest. "Fair enough. What about you?" "What do you do?" Carter hesitated just for a fraction of a second. "I'm in manufacturing," he said carefully. "Industrial equipment, mostly. It's not as exciting as shaping young minds." "I bet it's more exciting than you're making it sound," Emma said. She glanced at her phone. The 5 minutes had somehow become 10 and she still hadn't moved. "I really should go." "One more question," Carter said quickly. "Do you believe in coincidences?" Emma tilted her head, considering. "I think sometimes things happen at the right time." "Why?" "Because I almost didn't come here today," Carter said. "I had a meeting scheduled. It got canceled last minute and I walked by this place and thought, why not? And then you were here." Her heart was doing something strange in her chest, a rhythm she didn't quite recognize. "And if I said, I almost went to the cafe 2 blocks down, but it was closed for renovations." "Then I'd say maybe coincidences are just the universe's way of making things happen without taking credit," Carter said. His eyes hadn't left hers, and Emma felt like she was standing on the edge of something vast and unknown. She stood up again, and this time she made herself walk toward the door. She'd taken 3 steps when she heard him call out, "Can I see you again?" Emma turned back. Every reasonable part of her brain said this was crazy. She didn't know this man, he could be anyone. But the part of her that had spent the last hour feeling more alive than she had in months said something different entirely. "Tomorrow," she said. "Same time, same place." The smile that broke across Carter's face was like sunrise. "I'll be here." She walked out into the cool October air feeling like she was floating. Her afternoon classes passed in a blur of multiplication tables and reading circles, and she kept catching herself staring out the window with a distracted smile that made her teaching assistant, Sophie, give her curious looks. The next day, Emma arrived at the café 5 minutes early, her stomach a mess of nervous energy. She'd changed her outfit 3 times that morning, finally settling on a burgundy sweater and jeans that made her feel like herself, but slightly elevated. She ordered her usual vanilla latte and claimed the same table they'd shared yesterday. Carter walked in exactly on time, and the relief on his face when he saw her made her realize he'd been worried she wouldn't show. "Hi," he said, sitting down across from her. "Hi," Emma replied, suddenly shy. They talked for 2 hours that day. She learned he had a younger sister named Grace who taught yoga in California, that his parents had died in a car accident when he was 25, that he'd put himself through business school working 3 jobs. He learned she'd grown up in a small town in upstate New York, that she'd always wanted to be a teacher ever since she was 5 years old, that she was terrified of birds but loved every other animal. "Birds?" Carter asked, laughing. "Why birds?" "They have dead eyes," Emma said seriously. "And they can attack from above. It's strategic and creepy." When she finally looked at her phone, it was past 5. "Oh my God," she said. "I was supposed to meet my roommate an hour ago." "I'm sorry," Carter said, though he didn't look sorry at all. "Don't be," Emma said softly. "This was the best afternoon I've had in a long time." "Tomorrow?" he asked hopefully. "I can't tomorrow," Emma said. "Parent-teacher conferences until 8. Friday, Carter agreed immediately. "But that's 2 days away. What about dinner tonight?" Emma knew she should say no. This was moving fast, maybe too fast. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, "Okay. Yes, dinner." They went to a small Italian place in the West Village, tucked away on a quiet street. Carter ordered wine that Emma suspected was expensive, but she couldn't tell the difference, and they shared a pasta dish that was probably meant for one person, but felt intimate splitting between them. "Tell me something true," Carter said over tiramisu. "Something real that you don't usually share." Emma thought about deflecting, making a joke. Instead, she said, "I'm scared I'm not doing enough. Teaching is everything to me, but sometimes I lie awake at night wondering if I'm actually making a difference or if I'm just one person in a very broken system." Carter reached across the table and took her hand. The touch sent electricity through her. "The fact that you care that much means you're making a difference," he said. "Those kids are lucky to have you." "Your turn," Emma said. "Something true." Carter was quiet for a long moment. "I'm tired," he said finally, "of pretending, of being what everyone expects. I've spent the last 10 years building something and it's successful, but somewhere along the way I forgot why I was doing it." "What made you want to start?" Emma asked. "My father," Carter said. "He worked in a factory his whole life. The conditions were terrible, the equipment was dangerous. He lost 2 fingers in an accident when I was 12. He kept working there anyway because he had to. I wanted to create something different, something better. Equipment that protected workers instead of putting them at risk." Emma squeezed his hand. "That's not nothing, Carter. That's everything." They walked back through the city streets, the night cool but not cold, the lights of Manhattan creating a glow against the dark sky. When they reached Emma's apartment building in Brooklyn, Carter walked her to the door. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, and Emma's breath caught. "Yes," she whispered. His kiss was gentle and sure, and Emma felt the world tilt on its axis. When they pulled apart, she was dizzy. "Friday," Carter said. "Friday," Emma echoed. But Carter texted her Thursday morning, just wanted to say good morning. "Hope the conferences go well." Emma smiled at her phone like a teenager. They texted throughout the day, quick messages between her meetings with parents. He sent her a photo of a bird with the caption, "Your mortal enemy." She sent back a laughing emoji and a picture of her coffee cup with the note, "Fuel for surviving 20 sets of parents telling me their child is gifted." Friday took forever to arrive, and when it finally did, Emma felt like she might vibrate out of her skin with anticipation. They met at the café again, and this time Carter suggested a walk through Central Park. October had painted the leaves in shades of amber and crimson, and the late afternoon sun slanted through the trees in golden rays. They walked close together, their hands brushing until Carter finally just took hers, weaving their fingers together like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I have to tell you something," Carter said, stopping by the lake. He looked nervous and Emma's stomach clenched. "Okay," she said carefully. "I haven't been completely honest with you," Carter said, "about what I do." Emma's heart sank. Here it was, the catch. The thing that would ruin this perfect bubble they'd created. "Are you married?" she asked, the words coming out sharper than she intended. "What? No," Carter said quickly. "God, no, nothing like that. It's just the company I told you about, the manufacturing business. It's bigger than I made it sound. A lot bigger." "How much bigger?" Emma asked. "We operate in 42 countries," Carter said. "We employ over 50,000 people. Last year we cleared $2 billion in revenue." Emma stared at him. $2 billion. With a B, Carter confirmed. "Emma, I'm not just in manufacturing. I own Sinclair Industrial. I'm the CEO and I'm—" He took a breath. "I'm a billionaire with a B." The words hung in the air between them. Emma processed this information slowly. Sinclair Industrial, she'd heard of it vaguely. It was one of those companies that was everywhere but invisible, making the things that made other things work. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked finally. "Because the moment I tell people, everything changes," Carter said. "They look at me differently. They want something. Or they get intimidated and pull away. And when I met you, you just saw me. Just Carter. Not my bank account or my company or my reputation. You saw me, and I haven't felt that in so long." Emma understood, and that made it worse somehow. "I'm a second-grade teacher, Carter. I make $43,000 a year. We live in completely different worlds." "We live in the same world," Carter said firmly. "We live in the world where we can talk for hours about nothing and everything, where you make me laugh harder than I have in years. Where I can't stop thinking about you. That's the world I care about." "This is crazy," Emma said, but she hadn't let go of his hand. "Probably," Carter agreed. "Is that a deal breaker?" Emma looked at him, really looked at him. At the hope in his eyes, the vulnerability in the set of his shoulders. At the man who'd asked for 5 more minutes and turned her whole world upside down. "No," she said, "but you're buying coffee from now on." Carter laughed, relief flooding his features. "Deal." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Carter picked her up after work, and they'd explore different neighborhoods in the city. He took her to his favorite hole-in-the-wall dumpling place in Chinatown, where the owner knew him by name and acted completely unfazed by his wealth. She brought him to the community theater where her friend Zoe performed, and they sat in uncomfortable folding chairs eating overpriced candy and loving every minute of it. Emma met Grace over video chat, and Carter's sister grilled her with questions before finally declaring, "You seem normal. Don't let my brother's money make you weird." "I'll do my best," Emma promised, laughing. Carter started coming to her classroom after hours, helping her set up bulletin boards and organize supplies. He'd sit in the tiny second-grade chairs, his tall frame comically folded up, and listened to her talk about her students with genuine interest. "Marcus is finally starting to come out of his shell," Emma said one evening, stapling construction paper to a board. "He read aloud in class today for the first time all year." "That's huge," Carter said, handing her another staple. "It is," Emma agreed. She turned to look at him. "You know what's weird? You fit here. In this classroom that smells like crayons and hand sanitizer, sitting in furniture meant for 7-year-olds. You actually fit." Carter stood up, crossing to where she stood by the bulletin board. He cupped her face in his hands. "Maybe I fit wherever you are," he said, and kissed her. They spent Thanksgiving with Emma's family upstate. Emma had been nervous about introducing Carter, worried her parents would be weird about his money, or that he'd be uncomfortable in her family's modest farmhouse. Instead, her father and Carter spent 3 hours talking about manufacturing processes and workers' rights while her mother pulled Emma aside and whispered, "He's good people. Don't let this one go." "I won't," Emma promised. They were lying in Carter's apartment in December, a place Emma had initially been intimidated by with its floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture, but had come to love because it was where Carter was most himself. Snow was falling outside, dusting Manhattan in white. "I love you," Carter said suddenly. They were watching some cooking show neither of them was really paying attention to, Emma's head on his chest, and the words just came out like they'd been waiting for the right moment. Emma lifted her head to look at him. "Say that again." "I love you," Carter repeated, his voice sure and steady. "I love how you care about people. I love how you laugh with your whole body. I love that you're not afraid to tell me when I'm being stupid. I love that you made me remember why I do what I do. I love you, Emma Walsh." "I love you too," Emma said, and felt the truth of it in every cell of her body. "So much it scares me sometimes." "Good scared or bad scared?" Carter asked. "Good scared," Emma said. "The kind of scared that means it matters." Christmas came, and Carter surprised her with a donation to her school in her name, enough to fund the arts program that had been cut the year before. Emma cried when the principal told her, and then she went to Carter's office for the first time, marched past his confused assistant and kissed him in front of his entire executive team. "You're amazing," she said when they broke apart. "I just wrote a check," Carter protested. "You listened," Emma corrected. "I mentioned one time how sad I was that we couldn't afford art supplies anymore, and you fixed it. You're amazing." For Valentine's Day, they went back to Gramercy Coffee House. They sat at the same table where they'd met, and Emma laughed at the nostalgia of it all. "It's been 4 months," she said. "That's not long enough to be nostalgic." 4 months and 17 days, Carter corrected. "And I can be nostalgic if I want. This is where my life changed." "Dramatic," Emma teased, but her heart swelled. Carter reached across the table and took her hand. "I mean it. I was going through the motions before you, building an empire because I'd forgotten how to do anything else. And then you told me you should go, and I begged for 5 more minutes and you gave them to me. You've been giving me minutes and hours and days ever since, and every single one of them has been the best of my life." "Carter," Emma said softly. "I know it's fast," Carter continued. "I know people will say we're crazy. But I also know that I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to hear about your students and your day. I want to build a life with you, whatever that looks like. So I'm asking, will you move in with me?" Emma's breath caught. "That's a big step." "I know," Carter said. "And if it's too soon, we can wait. But Emma, I'm sure. I've never been more sure of anything." Emma thought about her tiny apartment in Brooklyn, about her roommate Sarah who was moving to Seattle next month anyway, about the life she'd built that suddenly felt like it had been waiting for this exact moment. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll move in with you." The transition was easier than Emma expected. She'd worried about losing herself in Carter's world, but he made space for her in every way. They converted one of his spare rooms into a home office for her, where she could grade papers and plan lessons. He learned to cook breakfast because she loved pancakes on Sunday mornings. She introduced him to reality TV, and he pretended to hate it while getting completely invested in the drama. They fought sometimes, usually about small things that stood in for bigger fears. Emma worried she wasn't contributing enough financially, even though Carter insisted money was the least interesting thing about their relationship. Carter worked too many hours, and Emma had to learn to tell him when she needed more of his time. They worked through it, learning each other's patterns and pressure points, figuring out how to be two independent people building something together. In the spring, Carter took her to the Sinclair industrial headquarters, giving her a real tour this time. He introduced her to everyone, from the executives to the maintenance staff, and Emma saw how people respected him not just because of his position, but because of how he treated them. "We're implementing new safety protocols across all facilities," Carter told her, showing her the plans. "Better equipment, more training, regular inspections. Everything I wished my father had." "He'd be proud of you," Emma said. "I hope so," Carter replied. "But honestly, the person I want to make proud is you." Summer brought long weekends in the Hamptons. Fall brought anniversary celebrations back at their café, and winter brought a moment that Emma would remember for the rest of her life. They were walking through Central Park, retracing their steps from that first Friday walk over a year ago. Snow was falling gently, catching in Emma's hair and on her eyelashes. Carter was quieter than usual, and Emma had noticed him fidgeting with something in his pocket all evening. "You okay?" she asked. "Perfect," Carter said. "Actually, better than perfect. Emma, can we stop for a second?" They stopped by the lake, the same spot where he'd told her about his company. The city lights reflected on the dark water, and the snow created a soft silence around them. "A year and 2 months ago," Carter said, "I walked into a café because my meeting got canceled. I saw you sitting at a table and something in my gut told me to approach you. Best decision I've ever made." "Carter," Emma said, her heart starting to race. "You told me you should go," Carter continued, reaching into his pocket, "and I begged for 5 more minutes. You gave them to me. And then you gave me hours and days and months. You've given me a life I didn't know I was missing. You've made me laugh and think and feel things I'd forgotten I could feel. You've made me better." He dropped to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box, and Emma's hands flew to her mouth. "Emma Walsh, I don't want 5 more minutes anymore. I want forever. Will you marry me?" The ring was beautiful, a simple diamond that caught the light and sparkled like the snow falling around them. But Emma barely saw it because she was looking at Carter, at the love and hope and certainty in his eyes. "Yes," she said, the word coming out as a laugh and a sob at the same time. "Yes, absolutely yes." Carter stood up, sliding the ring onto her finger, and then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and Emma felt like they were the only 2 people in the entire world. They got married in June, a year and 8 months after that first meeting in the café. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family, held at the farmhouse where Emma grew up. Grace was the maid of honor, and Emma's father walked her down an aisle lined with wildflowers. Carter cried when he saw her, not caring who noticed, and Emma's vows made everyone tear up when she talked about 5 minutes that changed everything. The reception was in a tent in the backyard, with string lights and a local band playing songs they could actually dance to. Emma's students had made them a card signed by all 23 of them, with crayon drawings of what they imagined a wedding looked like. Carter's team from Sinclair Industrial had pooled together to make a donation to education programs in the city. It was perfect in its imperfection, real and warm and theirs. "Mrs. Sinclair," Carter said as they danced to their first song as a married couple. "I'm keeping Walsh professionally," Emma reminded him, but she was grinning. "The kids know me as Miss Walsh." "Miss Walsh Sinclair," Carter suggested. "Too long," Emma laughed. "How about you just call me your wife?" "I like the sound of that," Carter said, pulling her closer. They honeymooned in Italy, 2 weeks of exploring small towns and eating too much pasta and making love in sunlit rooms with shuttered windows. Emma had never been to Europe, and Carter took joy in showing her everything, watching her face light up at ancient ruins and Renaissance art. "I want to bring my students here someday," Emma said in Rome, standing in front of the Colosseum. "Not this class, obviously. They're too young. But someday, I want kids who never thought they'd leave New York to see the world." "Then we'll make it happen," Carter said. "We can set up a scholarship fund, field trips, educational travel, whatever you want." "Just like that?" Emma asked. "Just like that," Carter confirmed. "Emma, my money matters when it can do things that matter. This matters." They came home to their apartment, which now felt completely like theirs rather than his with her things added. Emma had left marks everywhere. Her books mixed with his on the shelves, her photos on the walls, her plants on every available surface bringing life to the modern space. Fall came, and Emma started a new school year with a new class of second graders. Carter cut back his hours at work, hiring a chief operating officer to handle day-to-day operations so he could focus on innovation and big-picture strategy. It meant more time for dinners together, for weekend trips, for building the life they wanted. In October, 2 years after they'd met, Emma felt off. She was tired all the time and certain smells made her nauseous. Carter worried she was getting sick, but Emma had a suspicion that she didn't want to voice until she was sure. She took the test in the bathroom of their apartment while Carter was at work. When the 2 lines appeared, Emma sat on the floor and stared at them for a long time. They hadn't been trying exactly, but they hadn't been preventing either. The conversation about kids had been one of those someday talks that couples had. Apparently, someday was now. Carter came home to find Emma sitting on the couch, the pregnancy test on the coffee table in front of her. He looked at it, then at her, then back at the test. "Is that?" he asked. "I'm pregnant," Emma said. "Are we ready for this?" Carter sat down next to her, taking her hands in his. "Honestly, I don't know. Is anyone ever really ready? But Emma, if I'm going to do this with anyone, I want it to be you." "I'm terrified," Emma admitted. "Me too," Carter said. "But also excited." "Is that allowed?" "I think it has to be," Emma said. And then she was crying and laughing at the same time, and Carter was holding her, and it felt like that moment in the café all over again. The moment where everything changed, where life split into before and after. The pregnancy was relatively easy. Emma had morning sickness that lasted into the afternoon, and her feet swelled to comical proportions, but overall, she felt good. Carter was attentive to the point of being slightly overbearing, reading every pregnancy book he could find and trying to implement all of the advice simultaneously. "I love you, but if you tell me to put my feet up one more time, I'm going to lose it," Emma told him in her 7th month. "Sorry," Carter said sheepishly. "I just want everything to be perfect." "It doesn't have to be perfect," Emma said, taking his hand and placing it on her belly. "It just has to be ours." Their daughter was born in May during a warm spring that felt like a promise. The labor was long and hard, and Carter held Emma's hand through all of it, whispering encouragement and love and letting her squeeze his fingers until they went numb. When the doctor placed their daughter on Emma's chest, tiny and red and screaming, Emma looked at Carter and saw tears streaming down his face. "She's perfect," he said. "She's wrinkly," Emma corrected, but she was crying too. "But yeah, she's perfect." They named her Caroline, after Carter, and Rose, after Emma's grandmother. Caroline Rose Sinclair came home to a nursery painted soft yellow, with a mobile of stars and moons hanging over her crib. Emma's students had made her baby cards, and Grace flew in from California to meet her niece. The first few months were exhausting in ways Emma hadn't anticipated. She'd taken a year's leave from teaching, and suddenly, her days were consumed with feeding schedules and diaper changes, and trying to remember if she'd eaten lunch. Carter took paternity leave, something he'd never done in his entire career, and they stumbled through new parenthood together. "I don't know what I'm doing," Emma said one night at 3 in the morning, trying to get Caroline to take a bottle. "Neither do I," Carter admitted, but he took over anyway, giving Emma a break. They figured it out slowly in inches and moments. Emma learned Caroline's different cries, what each one meant. Carter became an expert at swaddling, his large hands surprisingly deft. They took turns with night feedings, moved through their days in a fog of exhaustion, and somehow fell more in love with each other in the process. "I didn't think I could love you more than I did," Emma told Carter one afternoon. Caroline was napping on his chest, her tiny body rising and falling with his breath. "But watching you be a father, it's everything." When Emma went back to teaching, it was harder than she expected to leave Caroline. But her students welcomed her back with enthusiasm, and she fell back into the rhythm of lesson plans and recess duty. Carter's mother-in-law, who'd moved to the city to be closer to them, helped with childcare, and Emma felt grateful beyond words for the support system they'd built. Caroline grew as babies do. She started smiling, then laughing, then rolling over and sitting up and crawling. Her first word was Dada, which made Carter insufferably proud, but her second was Mama, which evened things out. She had Emma's light hair and Carter's gray eyes, and she was curious about everything. On Caroline's first birthday, they went back to Gramercy Coffee House. Caroline sat in a high chair, making a mess of a muffin, while Emma and Carter drank their coffee and watched her with besotted expressions. 3 years ago," Emma said. "That's all it's been. 3 years since I tried to leave and you asked for 5 more minutes." "Best 5 minutes of my life," Carter said. "They turned into hours," Emma reminded him. "And then into a lifetime," Carter finished. He reached across the table, taking her hand like he had that first day. "I love you, Emma, more every day." "I love you too," Emma said. "Even when you're annoying." "Especially when I'm annoying," Carter corrected, and Emma laughed, the sound bright and real. Caroline threw a piece of muffin, and it landed in Carter's coffee. Emma burst out laughing harder, and Carter joined in, and the other patrons of the café smiled at the young family, clearly so in love with life and each other. Years passed in the way years do, marked by moments both ordinary and extraordinary. Caroline started preschool, and Emma cried dropping her off the first day. They had a son, James, 2 years later, and their apartment became louder and messier and more full of love than Emma had thought possible. Carter expanded Sinclair Industrial's worker protection programs internationally, winning awards and recognition, but he was most proud of coaching James's little league team. Emma eventually became principal of Riverside Elementary, a position that let her impact even more students while still staying in the classroom she loved. She started the travel scholarship program she dreamed of, sending deserving students on educational trips around the world. On their 10th anniversary, Carter took Emma back to Central Park, back to the lake where he'd proposed. Their kids were with Grace for the weekend, giving them a rare moment alone. "You remember what you said to me here?" Carter asked. "I said yes," Emma replied. Best decision I ever made. Do you remember what I said to you the very first day we met? Carter continued. Emma thought back, trying to recall exact words from a decade ago. You said, "Please don't go." Before that, Carter said. When you said you had to leave that first time, do you remember what I said? Emma closed her eyes, bringing herself back to that moment. The café, the empty cup in her hand, the feeling that she should stay but knowing she had responsibilities. And then his voice stopping her. You said please don't, Emma said softly, and then you asked for 5 more minutes. I've never stopped wanting 5 more minutes with you, Carter said. Even now, after 10 years and 2 kids and building a whole life together, I wake up every morning wanting 5 more minutes, 5 more minutes in bed, 5 more minutes at breakfast, 5 more minutes before sleep. With you, I always want more time. You're going to make me cry, Emma said, her eyes already welling up. Good, Carter said, pulling her close, because I'm going to keep asking for 5 more minutes for the rest of our lives. Deal, Emma whispered against his chest. You can have all the minutes you want. They stood there by the lake, snow starting to fall just like it had the night he proposed, and Emma thought about the strange alchemy of timing and chance. How she'd walked into a café on an ordinary Tuesday, how a man had asked to share her table, how 5 minutes had turned into hours, had turned into a lifetime of moments she wouldn't trade for anything. Thank you, Emma said. For what? Carter asked. For asking for 5 more minutes, Emma said. For not letting me walk away, for building this life with me. Thank you for staying, Carter replied. For giving me those 5 minutes, and all the minutes after. They walked home through the snowy streets of Manhattan, hand in hand, talking and laughing and planning their future. When they got back to their apartment, it felt like walking into everything good in the world. Photos on the walls chronicling their journey, toys scattered across the floor, evidence everywhere of a life well loved and fully lived. Caroline and James came home the next day, crashing through the door with stories about their weekend with Aunt Grace. Caroline, now 8 years old, had her mother's teaching instinct and her father's determination. James, at 6, was all energy and curiosity. They were loud and messy and perfect. Did you have a good anniversary? Caroline asked, hugging her mother. The best, Emma said, kissing the top of her daughter's head. How was Aunt Grace's? She taught us yoga, James reported. I can do a tree pose now, want to see? Absolutely, Carter said, and James proceeded to demonstrate, wobbling but proud. That night, after the kids were in bed, Emma and Carter sat on their couch with glasses of wine, the city lights twinkling outside their windows. You ever think about that day? Emma asked. Really think about it. How different things would be if even one small thing had changed. All the time, Carter admitted. If my meeting hadn't been canceled, if you'd gone to the other cafe, if I hadn't asked to share your table, if you'd said no to 5 more minutes. But I didn't, Emma said. And you did. And here we are. Here we are, Carter echoed, pulling her closer. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from years of knowing someone completely. Emma thought about her students, about the lessons she tried to teach them about kindness and courage and taking chances. She thought about how sometimes the bravest thing you could do was stay when everything told you to go. How 5 minutes of courage could change everything. What are you thinking about? Carter asked, his voice soft in the dim light. That I should have gone, Emma said, and Carter tensed until she continued. I should have gone, but I didn't, because you asked me to stay and something in me knew even then that you were important. That those 5 minutes mattered. They did, Carter said. They were the most important 5 minutes of my life. Mine too, Emma agreed. She turned to look at him, at the face she'd memorized over 10 years, the gray eyes that still made her heart skip. Ask me. Ask you what? Carter said, confused. For 5 more minutes, Emma said. Ask me. Carter's face softened with understanding. He took her hand just like he had that first day in the café and looked into her eyes. Emma Sinclair, will you give me 5 more minutes? Yes, Emma said, smiling. Always yes. 5 more minutes, 5 more hours, 5 more decades. You can have them all. And as Carter kissed her, Emma thought about how the best love stories weren't the ones that were easy or predictable. They were the ones where someone asked you to stay, and you found the courage to say yes. Where 5 minutes turned into forever, and every single minute was worth it. Where a chance meeting in a crowded cafe became the foundation of everything that mattered. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm, millions of lives intersecting and diverging in patterns too complex to predict. But inside their apartment, Emma and Carter had created their own small universe, one built on 5 minutes of bravery and sustained by a lifetime of choosing each other, again and again and again. And somewhere in Manhattan, in a corner cafe where it all began, someone was probably sitting at a table, trying to decide if they should stay or go. Emma hoped they stayed. Hoped they took the chance, said yes to 5 more minutes, opened themselves up to the possibility that ordinary moments could become extraordinary if you let them. Because that's what love was in the end. Not grand gestures or perfect timing, but the willingness to stay when you could leave. To ask for 5 more minutes and mean it. To build a life from hours and days and years of choosing each other. To look back after a decade and know, with absolute certainty, that every single minute was exactly where you were supposed to be. Emma fell asleep that night in Carter's arms, grateful for coffee shops and canceled meetings and 5 minutes that lasted hours. Grateful for the man who'd asked her to stay and the life they'd built from that simple request. Grateful for every ordinary, extraordinary minute of it all. And if anyone had asked her, she would have said the same thing she'd told Carter all those years ago, the truth that had guided every moment since. Yes, always yes. 5 more minutes. Forever.